Nice. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, had some work changes take place
Okay.
on Friday. Um, so I'm trying to kind of grapple with the new situation that I'm in right now.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, what were the natures of the changes?
well, I've been working. Technically, well, I don't know how much you know about my background or anything, but um, my father-in-law owns a private school up in
Okay.
Orange County,
Right, right.
and
Yeah, you mentioned that last time.
there's
Yeah.
four campuses. So I've been doing marketing for the school as a contractor for a while, for a
Mm-hmm.
long time, probably 16 years or so.
Wow.
And it's a really, really difficult work environment, like
Mm-hmm.
to the point where there's a lot of people leaving, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just a problem right now. And I've gone through a bunch of marketing directors. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just been, for me personally, it's been just a meat grinder almost the whole
Mm-hmm.
time I've
Yeah,
been there.
yeah, you're talking about how tough of a experience it's been.
Right. And so a couple months ago, I was talking to my brother-in-law, who's the president of the school, and my
Mm-hmm.
father-in-law, and we kind of decided, all right, well, over the next year, figure out what you want to do, because they know I'm not happy
Mm-hmm.
physically being at the school.
Sure.
So they said, you know what, take the next year, figure things out. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the nice thing, I guess, about a family business. I mean, they
Sure.
can extend that kind of flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of been doing that, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, there's so much stuff that has to get done at the school, stuff I'm
Right.
just working on and things. I haven't really been able to just sort of step out and just
Mm-hmm.
explore things. I'm
Right.
like knee deep in everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is they've got so much on their own plates,
Mm-hmm.
and they're being fed just bad information from
Mm-hmm.
other people. They really have no idea what I do or what
Mm-hmm.
anyone in marketing does. Like, it's
Right.
a huge problem, which is part of the reason that people are leaving, because they don't feel appreciated, they don't
Mm-hmm.
feel anything, and so people are
Yeah.
just like, I'm out of here. Um, so they hired a new marketing director
Mm-hmm.
on Friday, and my brother-in-law called me into his office and basically said, you've been around here a long time. You've
Mm-hmm.
seen all the good, the bad that's happened, probably more bad than good at this point. And we don't want you to be an influence on this new person coming in.
Okay.
And I was kind of like, okay, like I wasn't sure what that meant exactly.
Sure.
Said, well, sometimes you can kind of come across negative, and we want
Okay.
her to be just all roses when she comes in. And
Mhm.
now the funny thing about that is, of all the people that are still in the marketing department, I'm probably the most open-minded
Right.
to this particular director that's coming in. I've seen
Sure.
a lot of really bad people come in. Like, and
Right.
even, I mean, everyone admits that. That's like not even, that's just common knowledge.
Sure.
So if anyone there, I could probably be the most pessimistic, considering
Mhm.
everything that I've seen over the past 16 years.
Sure.
But for some reason, they kind of singled me out and
Mhm.
leveraged well, you were going to step out anyways. And
Mhm.
so they said, just, we don't want you physically here because
Okay.
you might impact her negatively in some way.
Mhm.
So it was just this. I'm still doing projects. I mean, even today, I'm actually parked at one of the campuses because after our call, I have some stuff to do.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of in this weird, like, all of a sudden, I'm just, everything I've been involved with
Mhm.
is sort of not there overnight. I
Yeah.
wasn't fired or anything, but it kind of feels like that. Like, just
Right.
don't be here kind of a thing. And
Yeah. Don't bring your energy to
it's
this.
right.
Mhm.
And but the thing is, I was talking to Nicole, who's someone else in marketing, and she was saying that um, she thinks there's a guy named John Barrier at the school, and he's one of he's a very kind of he undermines a lot of stuff there.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, my brother-in-law and father-in-law trust him
Mhm.
to the point where basically if he says something, they just go with it, period.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that John Barrier was kind of
The
the
barrier.
pusher. Yeah. Yeah, no pun
Yeah,
intended. Yeah,
yeah,
he's the
that's why
barrier
you
there.
think that it was from a book, right? When they choose a name for the.
It's so frustrating, but I mean, it is what it is at this
Hmm.
point. So,
Yeah.
on one hand, it's good because the energy at the administrative offices where I'm usually at is it's so bad that people that don't even uh, work at the school will
Hmm.
come in and have made comments like, "What's going on here?" Like you
Yeah.
can just feel that
Hmm.
things are off. And then people that are at the campuses that periodically come in.
Hmm.
I mean, just last week, one of the admissions directors on a campus told me she's like, every time I go in there, it just feels off, like
Hmm.
just bad.
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, I sit in that all
Hmm.
day long.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, as much as I don't like the circumstances,
Hmm.
and it seems like John Barrier had some thing against me. I don't know what it is, but the bottom
Right.
line is I'm not there. And on that, and that because of that, I'm happy. Like I'm not
Right.
sitting in that pool of bad energy all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Hmm.
I guess my concern is that because I've been kind of pushed away sort
Yeah.
of overnight, I'm a little nervous about, well, what's going to happen moving forward, because it's not
Hmm.
like I want to 100% sever ties from the school, because at the
Yeah.
moment it's, if anything, it's a paycheck and
Sure.
I still have things that I'm doing.
Hmm.
um, I just don't want to, based on bad information or
Yeah.
misleading information, have
Yeah.
them make decisions about me
Hmm.
that they don't have to make
Yeah.
because they don't have the full story, kind of a thing, that they're
Sure.
being
Sure.
sort of brainwashed. Maybe that's not the right word, but
Influence.
strongly influenced for not genuine reasons. And
Right.
so that's what I'm a little nervous about.
Hmm.
Although my brother-in-law told me, I mean, hey Russ, we talked about having the next year or
Hmm.
whatever to kind of figure things out. So on that hand, I'm not concerned that next month they're just going to
Hmm.
boot me or something like that.
Sure. Sure. It doesn't feel like that's their nature too, or that it feels like they do take care of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be from just a purely a family standpoint,
Sure.
probably not the greatest idea. I
Sure.
mean, it just
Right.
wouldn't help anything. I mean,
Right.
they like getting together every couple weeks for family dinner, and if
Hmm.
they were to just see you later, Russ, for no good reason at all, that would be a
Right.
problem.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, I've wanted to leave the school
Hmm.
for a long time,
Yeah.
but uh, I don't know, getting some space has
Hmm.
been kind of interesting. I've been
Hmm.
happier with the stuff I'm doing just because I haven't been physically there as much
Yeah.
because of some of the projects I have. So I don't know. I don't feel as bad as I was for a long time.
Hmm.
And this maybe this will help a lot. Just not them not wanting me there all the time.
Yeah.
That could be interesting.
Sure.
But I'm still totally open to. I mean, if I can figure out something else to really channel my energies towards, I would much
Hmm.
rather do that
Right.
than cling on to the school or something just out of
Yeah. It's a little bit of
need.
a trap, right? No.
Exactly. That you're the only person that's ever said the word trap.
Mhm.
I've said that before and thought that, and it
Mhm.
feels like a trap that I'm in sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course. Yeah, well, so that's kind of big news, and it's a lot to take in, I'm sure, from a perspective of wanting to be appreciated, and that is interesting. One of the big themes that we pulled out at the end of the session last week was the desire to be appreciated,
Mm,
and valuing that over not valuing that.
right.
So this is, you know, I mean, it's spooky sometimes how much stuff just lines up with whatever it is that we're tapping in on, and I mean, this falls right into that category of the opposite end of that continuum of feeling not valued, not supported, um, not appreciated.
Right.
Um, yeah, really interesting. So yeah, I'm really I think it's gonna be really interesting today, how all this feels as we move forward with doing some of the aligned living work, um, because one of the things it does is it clears the air around us, and it allows us to get more focused on not the emotions of it, not how it feels, not whether we feel supported or unsupported, but really what's right for us.
Mhm.
And this is a big step in the right direction of what's right for you. And it doesn't feel good in the process, I'm sure. That's fair to
Yeah.
say. Um, awesome. So, yeah, that's big. Let me just see if there's anything else there before we start to play with. Yeah. And so, have you talked to your wife about this at all yet?
Yeah. I haven't gone into a ton of detail. This is kind of a crazy weekend, but I did explain to her at least some of this. And her first comment was, "Well, isn't that what you've always wanted?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was kind of like, "Well, yeah, in a way."
Sure.
I mean, I wasn't seeing it go down like this. And actually,
Yeah.
after our conversation last week about feeling appreciated, it doesn't make you feel appreciated when half truths are you leverage to
Hmm.
push me away. It's like, well, like at least I don't know. That didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Like how this went down.
Hmm.
But like she said, yeah, I have wanted to distance myself more, and now they're
Hmm.
sort of forcing that distance.
Yeah.
So for better or worse,
Yeah.
there's distance now.
Yeah. It's interesting too. So, everywhere, where you're employed, where you live, all these different things kind of have a well that offers certain things and doesn't offer certain things. And so that workplace well, that you can keep dipping your bucket into, if all of a sudden appreciation becomes on your, stronger on your um, your screen and your awareness of what you're wanting, and you keep dipping into that well where it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter how many buckets you put down there. And so it's a really interesting thing of starting to have to go to a new well.
Yeah.
And that's really essentially what's happening here, is that well is closing off to you. um, and then there's this piece of like, okay, well, where do I put my bucket? um, and I think that's going to be a really interesting kind of game for you. And I do think it'll start to feel like a game for you a little bit as we play with this. Uh, of what do I want to pull up in my bucket, and if it's not in that well, that's the trap, right? Like we're like, oh my god, it's like fishing in a in a pond that doesn't have fish in it. Like, it doesn't matter how many times I cast the rod, I'm going to keep coming up with the same thing.
Right.
And so when we start to see this as the universe supporting us, when we start to see it as, God's hand, when we start to see it as, that we're getting pushed out of the way, so to speak, so that we can make decisions that would be foolhardy from a human perspective, but that the universe is supporting us to make. You couldn't go like, well, I have this great gig, and hence there's the trap, right? I'm going to start deconstructing this, even though I don't have another well to go to.
Right.
When we're ready, like the universe can make the illogical steps for us, so that we can step forward. And that really feels like this is um, the moment in your life where it's just choice point. There's ability to see the perfection in all, in the divine hand, in the support, and that kind of the love, really, from the universe, from God, however you want to see it, uh, there for you. And there's a other side of it, which is um, the opportunity to feel hurt, the opportunity to feel like shutting down, the opportunity to feel like disengaging, because it just you put so much time and energy into this, and it's finally fizzling out. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
and,
Yeah.
and and so it's kind of a project that was never yours to begin with, that you happened into in a way that was quite serendipitous, and it kind of held you hostage for a long time. And now there's this really weird feeling of taking your ship and detaching it from that mothership, and engaging in what can be exciting, on one hand, or it can be overwhelming, and I don't want to use the word depressing, but I mean that's kind of like it. It's like, there's two different places I can go with this. One, I can go with I got shot down. The other, I can go with I got released.
Hmm.
and it really is like, I think you're very clear, even though there may be a little bit of doubt still lingering about, the perspectives that are coming at me and about my job don't feel super accurate. um, and so I can take that personally, or I can go somewhere where that accuracy is really, where there's a match. And and then the other piece too, yeah, okay, we'll get right into this, is the idea that, um, of where feeling negative comes from, right? And start to play with the idea of like, okay, so was there some truth in what your brother-in-law was saying, that you've been through so much shit there, that you've been through so many rounds, that it's really, even when you're feeling optimistic, how optimistic can you feel, when you've watched, people get excited, and so is there a truth to that? And that truth can just be a truth without it being a negative thing. It can just be like a, well, of course, you know. um, and so as I bring that up, how does that feel to you? Um, does it feel like there is some truth to that, where it's is challenging to be optimistic, because you've been through so much with it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, because I mean, that conversation I don't think was easy for him to have. And it's also just like, of course, so there's not a blame on you of like, you should be more optimistic in this place. It's like, like you should be more like Charlie Brown when Lucy holds the football for him. It's like you should be a little bit more, forgetful of the patterns that have repeated over and over again here. And
Well, you know what doesn't help is the fact that my father-in-law, the day before this,
mhm,
I kind of found out they had hired this person
right.
unintentionally. Like I
Hmm.
saw something, that someone walking by holding something. I was like, oh, okay, well, they hired her for sure. And so
Right.
I went into my father-in-law because he asked me to come in for something else.
Hmm.
And so just briefly, I just asked him. I said, so I didn't ask him. I just said, so I'm pretty sure they hired Melissa.
Hmm.
Like they, I mean, meaning HR, I guess is kind of a lot. And he
Right.
said, well, uh, yeah, I think so. I think so. And I asked him, so what do you feel about that?
Hmm.
And he got kind of defensive.
Hmm.
And then he went into talking about how, we have to have someone. He just got almost kind of angry a little bit. Like we have
Yeah.
to have, so I didn't even say, I barely even said anything. Like
Yeah.
it's such a hot issue at
Hmm.
the school.
Right.
And then he flat out told me this is a desperation hire.
Wow.
He said, we just have to hire someone.
Hmm.
So he's telling me that.
Hmm.
But then when I talk to my brother-in-law and a few other people about the situation, what they're saying is, oh yeah, Melissa's, she's great and everyone really wants her. My father-in-law, who's the ultimate decision maker here, is saying she's a desperation hire.
Yeah.
So there's just massive conflicting stories, and
Yeah.
depending on who you're talking to and
Hmm.
depending on the
What the spin
situation,
is on it? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the bottom line is I think everyone does agree that really knows what's going on, that it is kind of a desperation hire.
Yeah.
I think it's personally, I think it's an unnecessary hire at the moment. Like we're in the holiday season right now. I mean, with schools,
Sure.
it's busy, but from a business standpoint,
Yeah. It's
it
not a.
just starts slowing down. I mean, this is like the last time hiring someone out of desperation is going to dramatically impact
Yeah.
things come
Yeah.
January or February. If it was that important, they should have hired the person 6 months ago,
Sure.
because it takes time for anything to actually kick in for a
Hmm.
private school. So yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
I
And it does
I
feel
feel
like your father-in-law is a little bit more, fearful for the future of the school. Um,
right,
and your brother-in-law is more like, I got it handled, and wanting to feel more, like he's on top of it. And your father-in-law is looking at it from, this doesn't look good. Um, and so I
right.
think there's a lot of personal stuff where your father-in-law is not trusting and your brother-in-law is being over optimistic because it lands on him, really. That's what it feels like.
Well, the ironic thing is that it's usually the reverse. Like my
Interesting.
father-in-law is like this hyper, like visionary, everything's great kind of a guy. And
Yeah.
Chad, my brother-in-law, everything is half empty kind of a guy. Like
Interesting.
it's totally opposites usually.
Yeah.
Um, so, and even Chad told me during our conversation on Friday that Melissa was not his first choice. There was
Interesting.
one other person. He didn't even want Melissa at first.
Hmm.
And so I hear that from Chad, and then I hear David saying she's a desperation
Hmm.
hire. But then they come down on me for having some, I think, very justifiable doubts and
Sure.
questions
Yeah.
when I've seen probably 6 directors in
Hmm.
my time here
Hmm.
get fired that shouldn't have been hired. And
Hmm.
they even openly admit in hindsight they shouldn't
Yeah.
have been hired. So, of course, I'm a little,
Yeah.
yeah, guys, like, don't forget what has happened. It's
Hmm.
not like we've learned from the past yet. If that had been the
Yeah.
case, then sure, I'm being overly negative or
Yeah.
pessimistic or whatever. But I don't feel like we've learned from the past yet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm very cautiously optimistic, I guess, about this next hire.
Hmm.
But it's the same people doing the same hiring
Yeah.
and looking at things through the same lens.
Yeah.
Why would we expect this to be dramatically different than anyone
Right.
else? I
Right.
don't know. I mean, that's just kind of the realist of me coming out, but
Yeah.
they interpret it as so negative. We don't even
Hmm.
want you in the office. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Well, the truth sayer isn't usually that popular.
no,
And especially when they feel like they're, yeah, I mean, they're just putting all their eggs in the basket again and seeing what happens.
right.
And so does it make sense to you then why they wouldn't want you to be there even observing it? Why they wouldn't want, like if they're trying to hold optimism, if they're trying to hold illusions, um, why they wouldn't want somebody who's telling, speaking truths in the middle of their illusions? Does that, at least from just a perspective of like, there's two different perspectives going on here. One is, it's like when people are trying to ignore something and somebody keeps pointing it out, they're like, you know what? I don't think this is helping, helping us hold our illusion. Right?
Right. No, that's yeah. If I look at it through their lens, if I
Yeah.
try to put myself in their shoes,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just
And
frustrating because I know too much about
hmm.
what they're actually thinking because I
Right.
can talk to them on like a father-in-law,
Hmm.
brother-in-law level.
Yeah.
So I know what they're really thinking,
Hmm.
but that doesn't translate into what they're telling other people to
Sure.
kind of make things sound
Hmm. Yeah. The
all
spin on it.
great and she's the best choice. And I
Yeah.
know that's flat out just not true, but they're
Yeah.
trying to kind of put up this front to
Yeah.
hopefully,
Create momentum.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get it, but I'm just in a weird kind of in
Hmm.
between a rock and a hard place with what I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I think that's the whole piece is to, when, as you get clear on not allowing yourself to be between a rock and a hard place, of like that's been that trap of like the feeling of being fully self-expressed, like that, like letting your full energy run through you. Everything's had to be metered because it's had boundaries all around it and
Right.
repercussions and family and all of that. And so well, let's jump over into the online living stuff so we make sure that we have some time to play with the energy today.
Sure.
And it really is, it's about turning your light back on, because it's, you're in a place where you can see that, um, there's been a lot of frustration. And so when we turn our light on, whatever it is that we're carrying becomes, basically amplified. Right. And so like the more full of energy you get, the more, like when you're carrying a lot of frustration, the more the frustration comes out. The more, like,
Mhm.
so all the, whatever it is that you're in, the more you amp yourself up, it amplifies. And
Yes.
so part of this work is we're going to disengage from, really what's been your surroundings, which is pretty interesting. I mean, this is kind of like a perfect setup for doing this work. Is like, okay, we're going to remove you from the surroundings, step one. And so when you take all the personal stuff out of it, and I think it was really important for us to take some time at the beginning of this session to talk about why it feels so personal, what feels like it sucks about it, and to feel into those emotions and that feeling of not being appreciated and, being scapegoated a little bit. Um, all those things, which like, yeah, that's all very, very present. And then we're going to play a little bit with what the goals are for you and your inner world. Like what I mean by that, we could say about our happiness, joy levels. We could talk about our sense of fulfillment. But it's really about what's going on in your reality. And your reality has just been constantly infused by limitations and restrictions and struggle. And it's been a cage where you've had to fall in line and not push too hard on anything. Is that fair to say?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And so when we don't get to work out that sense of self-expression, like it slowly catches up with us. And I know you talked a bit about depression, and I mean that's like the breeding ground for it. That's the place where it's if we're not allowing, if there's not a place for our positive authenticity to come through, it often comes through as our negative authenticity.
Right.
And also the stifling and the restriction. And so yeah, the first thing we're going to do then is we're going to go through some processes that will kind of remove you from that outer surroundings, because ultimately the line living work is about taking our awareness, which we can talk about in forms of our energy field. And so from that perspective, then we have this electromagnetic field that all living things have flowing around us, like the earth has it. It's kind of like, it's called a toroidal field. So it's like what's around a magnet. Have you seen the pictures of a toroidal field before?
That word doesn't sound familiar, but I've seen graphics and pictures of fields and things.
Let me pull it up here. It's weird. All my images disappeared on my screen and turned to just something that says PDF. So I got to read the labels. Sorry, 1 second. The heck? Here, I'll just do a search. Sorry. There we go. All right, so I'll screen share this with you here. So this is, there we go. So this is a toroidal field. So basically, you may have seen pictures in like earth science books where the earth is in the middle here, and then the electromagnetic field is just floating around the outside, or a magnet does the same thing. It has a poles to it. And that's where like the north and south poles of the, it's the same thing. We're talking about a magnetic field, and that's why we're talking about poles. That's why we're talking about electromagnetic fields and toroidal fields. And so anything that's alive has this. And so, if this were us, we'd be in the middle here, each having our own electromagnetic field that's running around us. That makes sense?
Sorry, David. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Yeah, the audio cut out just for a second. Okay.
Oh, okay. So did you catch what I was saying about the toroidal field? So basically there's, if this is the earth, there's a north and south pole, same thing with a magnet, same thing with us, so if this is your electromagnetic field, you're in the middle here, and it's constantly running around the outside of you. It's something that your heart creates, your brain creates. It's just a natural phenomenon that happens around anything that's alive. And science really identifies this and says that, yes, this is true. And it's, there's been some really amazing experiences with it, or experiments with it. And so what science is starting to understand is that electromagnetic field is not just a field of energy, but it actually carries information as well. And so for most people, it's just kind of in the form of data, like it's zeros and ones, where there's this study done that I think is so fascinating. It was at the ESADE school in Barcelona, Spain, which is like this renowned business school. And they took 30 graduate students, and they wanted to predict who would emerge as leaders in the group. And so they hooked them up to EEGs and EKGs, and then they gave them case studies and then just observed to see what would happen. And so they broke them down to like groups of 4 or 5. And every time within the first 20 to 30 minutes, they could predict who was going to emerge as a leader. Because what would happen is that whoever was the most stabilized internally. It wasn't like who was the most charismatic or the most knowledgeable or the most, is whoever had the most steady internal functioning. Everybody else in the group would just start to look to them for leadership. And so
Mm.
when we look at who the leaders are in our world, it kind of matches up with that. A lot of times people are following people they may not necessarily agree with that much, or they decide they do agree with them. But so much of it is about syncing up and in training with who they think is going to help them stabilize. So it's really a feeling of safety and security. And so what else happened though, that I mean, that makes sense, but this was a little spooky, is that there had to be some sort of an information transfer too, because the people that started syncing up with the leader, their internal functioning, like what the EEG and EKGs were reading, they started to actually mirror whoever was the leader. And so they
Mm.
started to stabilize and replicate in their own field, their own autonomic functions were syncing up and matching whoever's the leaders were. And so there's something that happens when we're, whatever surrounding we're in, whatever's the most stable, we tend to either, if we're in rebellion, like we push it away and go to struggle with it. But more often than not, we tend to, at some point, start to match up and sync up with our surroundings. And so groupthink, right? It's like it's happening at an energetic level, not just at a mental, emotional level. It's being driven by our fields.
How big is a field? Like, is this something that can extend through a phone, or is it like, can you pick up on my field,
Yeah,
or is
yeah,
this,
yeah.
like, you have to be within 5 feet, kind of a thing?
Well, I can basically like have an awareness of it, so I can know where people's fields are and the general information about them. And it depends on the individual. Like when we're shut down, like, and we'll play with it in just a minute. Like when I used to teach, it was funny. I was teaching a meditation class, and we were playing with our electromagnetic fields, and we were using divining rods to actually check to see uh, where people's fields were. And I thought mine was going to be huge because I do all this meditating and stuff. But in the school setting, mine was about an inch off my body because it was like, and this was before all the aligned living works. I didn't know how to not have all that affecting me so much. And so my solution was just, and I would bet that you do a lot of that too, but when you get really frustrated, it probably expands out. And so this kind of makes a sense of like you do have a naturally really big energy. And unfortunately, because of your setting, I think a lot of times when your energy gets big, it's focused on what's challenging. Is
Mhm.
that fair to say?
Yeah.
And so in a way, what your brother-in-law is saying is that you have a big influence. Like he's saying that your energy field gets quite large and it's carrying information that we don't want this person to have.
Mhm.
So it's like, well,
Yeah.
okay, well, when you put it that way, that makes sense, right? And so, this is all happening, right? And then there's another aspect to it too, is that that some people also have another level to their electromagnetic field called their emotional body. And what that means then is that not only are we receiving data, like information, but now we start to receive it not just in zero and ones, but in the feelings. And so it shows up in emotions. And so when we talk about empaths or highly sensitive people, like you can be around somebody that is very sad, and being in their field, it'll start to show up in your world of like, you'll feel this sadness, you feel this heaviness in you. And it's basically what happens is our electromagnetic field is like cameras and microphones, and so it's reading our surroundings constantly, but the screen and the speakers where it's playing is in here. And so it makes it very confusing when we read something there and play it here, because it's also the same place where our own emotions are and our own feelings are being played. And
Mhm.
so it all overlaps. It becomes this really congested soup of what's mine, what's my surroundings, and it makes it really hard to get clear, because we're constantly being uh, immensely affected by what's going on around us and who the people are that we're engaged with. And so this happens in the electromagnetic field, but it also happens in a way of what I call courting. And courting is basically like, it happens when we think of somebody and we tie into whatever's going on for them. And that's where the distance doesn't matter. That's why we're able to do a session like this, and we're hundreds of miles away, and it's not like the distance becomes irrelevant, is because we can basically run a cord between each other's fields and get all that same information. And so we do all this generally unconsciously. We don't know that we have control over this, because it's just been what we did from the moment we entered the planet. And so we come into this planet and we go, oh, what is this place? We send our awareness out into our surroundings, and we start reading our surroundings. And all that we read comes back and plays inside here. And then we go, oh, okay, well, this is who I am. And so our self-concept really becomes significantly affected, if not like 98% affected by our surroundings, because that's what we're reading internally. And so if the people around us are loving and supportive and think we're the most amazing thing in the world, our self-concept generally reflects that. If people around us are afraid of us or resentful or whatever it is that they have, our self-concept completely mirrors that. And so for most of our lives, we operate from that belief of whatever it is that we were born into, and whatever our surroundings were, whatever their beliefs were. We've just replicated it in our own field. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Is there a way to not do that?
No, I just wanted to let you know what your life sentence is. Yeah, and so that is the basis of aligned living, that we take charge of this now, and we it's particularly people that are empaths. So often they think their gift is feeling all of that, but it's so impractical, and it's really giving away our sense of self. It's giving away our gift that we're here to bring. It's like, I love the crabs in a bucket analogy. If you put one crab in a bucket, like say like a fisherman's out collecting crabs, he puts one in a bucket, it can crawl right back out again. But if you put two in, they can't get out because they're constantly pulling each other back down again. And so, I mean, that's how humans tend to work with each other, is the fears, the competition, the not good enough. Like, we're projecting all of that back and forth with each other, replicating it in either of those fields. And there's this feedback loop that keeps all of us trapped and stuck and disengaged and, disempowered, all of those things that are just becomes our reality. And it makes perfect sense. And so it also makes perfect sense that we just assume that's how our field is, that there was never a sense of, oh, I have this control panel internally, which ironically is our imagination. In the normal three-dimensional world, our imagination's about creativity and self-expression and all that type of stuff. But when we start to work in these higher frequencies, we realize our imagination is actually how we are able to control our energy field. And you think about it, people are like, well, how do you do that? Like, well, if I said, okay, well, lift your arm up and move it back down again, how did you do that? It's really your imagination that's making that happen. You don't go, like, if you try to think about it and think about what the neurotransmitters that are firing to make this happen, and the electronic stimuluses that are running through your body, through your nerves, like, you can't really do it from that perspective. You just have to see it happening, and then you do it. And so the things like moving our physical body is our hardwiring, and things like moving our electromagnetic field is our Wi-Fi. It's our wireless workings. And it's all just the same. You can plug into an Ethernet line, or you can hook into the Wi-Fi. It's all going to carry the information. It just feels kind of outrageous from how we've scientifically understood our reality.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the first steps then are to do some techniques for recognizing that you're in control of that. And that the default has just been set since you were a little kid. Like, you come to the world, what's going on around me? Boom, everything shoots out there. And then we just left it there, right? And it's now we become at the whims of our surroundings. The only hope we have of controlling our inner world is to control our surroundings. And our surroundings are constantly changing. And then everything around us becomes a threat because it's contagious and it makes us feel a certain way. Our father-in-law or our brother-in-law or our coworkers all make us feel things. And because it's literally a direct connection that's running into our inner world. And there's never a sense of that's happening out there, this is happening in here, because it's not. It's all meshed, which creates a massive trap of how do I engage in this, because there's never really a win for everybody. Because if one person feels powerful, the other one starts to feel disempowered. And then there's this tug of war that happens constantly.
Right.
Awesome. So the first step then is taking a minute, and we're just going to do a technique that I call the consciousness lock, and it's based on the idea that the the first thing we need to do is clear our field. You know, it's kind of like the hard reset. It's like, you know, if your phone or computer is acting up, you power it off and you power it back on again. And so what we're going to do is we're going to temporarily turn off our emotional body. And the emotional body is the part that we've had embedded in our energy field that's reading all the emotions of everything and is what cords with everything. And so we're going to turn it off temporarily, feel what it feels like to not be inundated by all this electromagnetic stimulus, and see what it feels like to just be free from all that. And a lot of times people have experienced it like when they've been out in the woods or maybe out in the water. But it's really kind of a bizarre experience to realize that we can just turn this on or off. And
Mhm.
then when we turn it back on again and turn it, instead of turning the emotional body on out here, we're going to turn it on in here. And that means that all those cameras and microphones that were in everybody else's space asking them about their emotional energy and about what they're feeling and thinking and doing, we're going to turn them on here, which now asks ourselves in our own alignment what we're feeling and thinking and doing. And it becomes, it's a little bit bizarre because all of a sudden now we become detached, disconnected from everybody else's feelings. We're still aware of them, but they're not showing up in here. There's just simply a knowing of like, well, this is where this person's coming from. And then it's no longer contagious. It's just something that's happening next to us.
Mhm.
That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay. And so real quick on the consciousness lock, the I like to use the analogy of an astronaut doing a spacewalk. And it's the reason I do that is because we're really looking at two different atmospheres. And so if we take our emotional body and turn it off, kind of, and then kind of open it in here, we have a lot of leaks, right? So it's so, you know, so we're kind of corded out there. We're kind of aware out there emotionally where we're leaking other people's emotional energy in, but we're also turned on in here. And that doesn't really do it. And so just like an astronaut that's out on a spacewalk, they couldn't just open the door to the shuttle and go back in. They need to go through an airlock. And so what we're going to create is basically a consciousness lock, where the way an airlock works is there's this chamber that's sealed to the inside of the shuttle. They open up to the outside to the vacuum of space. The inside of that pod, that the airlock becomes the same as the vacuum of space. The astronaut goes in, shuts the door, pressurizes the airlock, so that now it matches up with what's inside the shuttle, and they can open up the door to the inside of the shuttle. But there needs to be a clear delineation. There can't be like, is that door shut? Pretty much. Like, it would be a bad thing for an astronaut to do and say. Right? And so it works kind of the same way with our consciousness. If we don't have it sealed completely, we're going to be leaking still. You know, not as dire consequences, but it's still not what we're after. So,
Right.
any questions on that, or is that all?
No, that makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah. And so it's so fun as we start down the rabbit hole. What if we started here, it'd be like, what? But as we
Yeah.
start to talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Awesome. So this technique's really simple. And like I said, we're just going to use our imagination, and I'll assist you in this too, because we're kind of paving the way. We're helping you get used to controlling your emotional body. And so we're going to go into the consciousness lock, into this place where we're shut down and there's no external stimulus or internal stimulus really going on. It's like we're turning off that extrasensory ability. Okay. And then we'll just spend a couple minutes and talk about what this reality is like. And interestingly enough, is not everybody has their emotional body engaged, meaning that your experience of reality can be quite different from others, because if their emotional body is not engaged, they're not feeling that emotional impact of their surroundings. They're just going along with in this little bubble, basically inside a consciousness lock, because they don't have any awareness that would be outside of
Yeah.
it. And so we'll go here for two reasons. One is that hard reset, and the other is to start to go to just help us understand humanity and why people do some of the things they do. Um, and quite often our leaders are basically in a consciousness lock. They don't have that emotional body engaged, which is what allows them to be so stable, because they don't have stimulus affecting their emotions. They're just, like really dense. Okay. All right, so yeah, so just take some deep breaths, and we're going to start by creating a little contrast. And so we don't need to do this normally when you're going through the consciousness lock, but I think it's really helpful the first time. And so just start to feel out with your awareness, with your imagination, and just see what you can pick up on. If you can feel into the buildings around you, you said you're parked on one of the campuses, maybe feeling into the school, and just see what your field picks up as you expand it out. There you go. Yeah, nice. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have our palms of our hands representing our emotional body. So it's basically going to be all those cameras and microphones, so to speak, that are reading everything around us. And we can put them out with the palms open. In just a second, I'm going to count to 3. And on 3, we'll close our hands into a fist, bring them down to our lap, and we're just going to turn that emotional body off temporarily. And I'll talk you through it and assist you with it, okay? So on 3, we'll close the hands into a fist and bring them down to our laps, and just visualize that emotional body turning off, that toroidal field around us just going flat. So on 3, 1, 2, 3, close the hands into a fist, bring them down to your lap. We're just going to visualize everything shutting off, and it just kind of becomes this little bubble around us. We're closed down over the top of the head. There you go. Around the back and sides, below the feet, front of the heart and back of the heart. And we're just fully in our body when this happens. A little bit more over the top of the head, top of the crown. You may feel old energy leaving you as this happens too, because you're kind of decording with everything around you. And so there's a lot leaving your field. We'll be patient for just a minute as that all disconnects. There we go. And so again, this is not where we're headed to. This is just temporarily to clear the system and to experience what it's like for people that don't have an emotional body engaged. So if you want to go ahead and slowly open your eyes. What do you notice as you enter this state? Oh. Oh, shoot. Oh, there he is.
Hey, sorry about that.
No, it's interesting that electromagnetic fields are very influential.
I was facing the sun and my device, I guess, overheated.
Oh,
Which,
interesting. Okay, yeah, I've had that happen before.
all right, sorry about that. So yeah, I had just put my fist in my lap.
Yeah, it's funny. I was feeling you go out, and then I'm like, okay, you can open your eyes, and then you didn't. I'm like, oh, we must have lost connection. So here, let's go through it again. And yeah, so we'll start again by just closing your eyes and just start to feel out from your energy field. Just see what you can pick up on your surroundings. There you go. Let that just get nice and big. And then as you feel ready, go ahead and just close the hands into a fist, bring them down to our lap, allowing that bubble to just close around you. So you're fully in the body. Yeah, your energy field already cleared so much the first time. This is awesome. So we'll picture that bubble closing over the top of the head and below the back and sides. Below the feet, over the heart and back. Just letting a little more clear your field. There we go. As you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes too and just keep the state going. But what do you notice?
Uh, my heart started beating a little faster when I did
Yeah,
that.
yeah. We're a little
Uh,
more aware of it too.
yeah, there's kind of a, I don't know, almost kind of like a tingling around me a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're starting to open up a little bit here. So here we'll close the hands into a fist again, just bring them down. And so not seeking in the old way of what you're feeling, but just being really present in this moment as that bubble closes in over the top of the head. There we go. On the back and sides, below the feet. There it goes. Yeah. And so what do you notice as we just allow things to stay flat like this? How does your brain functioning feel? How does your stimulus feel?
I feel calm.
Yeah. Do you notice the quiet?
Yeah,
How does your brain feel as far as stimulated versus just kind of more passive?
I'd say more passive.
Yeah.
My brain tends to be constantly stressed about things and kind of,
Yeah. Yeah. And so most of that is in response to your all the energy coming in being really inundated by all this emotional energy. And so do you feel that solid groundedness in you right now? Like your heart's really solid, your body's feeling solid. Um, and you can even open the eyes and just kind of be aware for a second, but still staying internally. There you go. And so what do you notice about your surroundings too as you just kind of look around and
um, maybe feels a little more distant, kind
yeah,
of like I'm not as attached to it
yeah,
possibly.
yeah, like it's separate from you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, a lot probably the majority of the planet lives in this state where they're just like the external world's separate from them. They don't like even as we're sitting here, do you feel the distance between us now that there's like I don't know if you feel like a lot of times there's a sense of shared responsibility when we connect with people. And when we're in this place, it's like just two different people talking, if that makes sense too.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like I said, we're not. This isn't our end game. We're not. This isn't our destination. We're just going through it to experience what other people experience, but more importantly, to go through that hard reset. Um, and so, how does it feel to you to have it so quiet internally, to have the surroundings be separate from you?
Feels good.
Yeah, a little freeing, maybe.
I've had moments during meditation where my brain just sort of shut off,
Yeah.
which was an amazing feeling. It was just
Mhm.
kind of, I'm just there.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking or feeling anything. It was just nothing, kind of,
Hmm.
in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I mean that is the reality for a lot of people. It's funny when you talk about not trying to teach non-energetic people to meditate. They're like, yeah, it kind of feels like normal, but with my eyes closed. And then those of us that are so uh, emotionally aware of our surroundings, it's like we try so hard to to get to this quiet place internally, but like when we realize we have this control panel that we can just start to play with. And it's funny, your crown is real, like your center channel is super strong. So let's go ahead and open up internally so we can get that flowing again. So with the hands closed in a fist, putting one over the heart, one over the solar plexus, and you can go ahead and close your eyes again here. In just a second, we'll open our hands and we're going to visualize that same sensors that were outside opening up internally. And then we're going to call on a direct connection with God, direct connection with the earth, and we'll get that flow going, okay? So as you feel ready, go ahead and open up the palms. Visualize yourself opening up internally as we turn on that emotional body inside. And we call on that direct connection with God, that channel of light that's running straight down from source through the top of the head. There we go. Down that to flow in through the crown as flows down through the back of the brain, spinal column, down through the neck, filling through the heart. There we go. Letting it flow down each vertebrae in the spine, all the way down to the tailbone, to the base of the spine, out the base of the spine to the earth, down the bottom of the feet, out the bottom of the feet into the earth, deep down till we find that divine reflection, that sacred earth, way, way, way down, deep into the earth, grounding into it, stabilizing with it. There we go. As we invite that light from the earth, from that sacred earth, back up through the feet, through the tailbone, up the spine, filling through the back of the heart, through the back of the neck and brain, spinal column, out the crown. As you allow your awareness to just slide to the back of the brain and just be in that same channel. There you go. And so take a minute to just take some inventory about what you're noticing and feeling and just being present in this current reality right now. And so what do you notice as we open up internally?
Almost feels like there's kind of a pulse, like blowing up and down, just sort of,
Yeah.
I don't know, like a little
Yeah, there is.
current or something. Like
Yeah.
alternating.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And so your awareness is able to feel that without all that stimulus. And we're also being very intentional about, instead of courting with our surroundings and looking to our surroundings for information, we're looking for our direct connection with source, or our direct connection with our deepest sense of self, our direct connection with that reflection of source in the earth. There you go. And that channel that is flowing through you now, that becomes our guidepost. That becomes what it is that drives our reality. And we break that feedback loop of all the problems of the world, and we start to generate our energy through alignment rather than regurgitate our surroundings. And then we become the influencer rather than the influence. We disengage from that old game and create a new one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so how does it feel to be in your physical body right now?
I feel in control.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Do you notice how the quietness is still there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's still, we don't lose our sense of understanding our surroundings, of knowing where people are at, but we don't run that emotional energy through us anymore. Now, instead, what we're running through is this clean, clear frequency. And so if we were to just, again, I'm going to bring something up, and I want you to just stay in that, bring your awareness to the back of the brain, feeling that flow coming in through the crown, that flow coming up from the earth. There you go. And so we're going to stay here in this state of consciousness. It's really a heightened awareness, a heightened perspective, an ascended state, you could call it. And I'm going to bring something up, and I want you to just see how it feels from this state of consciousness. So forgetting anything you've already known about, any decisions or things you've figured out, any old perspectives, we're just looking at it and saying, how does it feel from right here, right now? Does that feel good or feel okay to do?
Mhm.
All right. And so not going back in time, but just bringing to your awareness right now into your center channel, into that flow, the conversation you had with your brother-in-law yesterday around not being in the office. And how does it show up for you from here without going into any old beliefs around it?
I actually felt nothing just now.
Yeah. It's not personal.
Mhm.
Nice. And this is a really interesting piece. And so when you say you didn't feel anything, do you still feel good? Does it feel pleasant to be in your body?
It does. I feel good right now.
Yeah.
It almost, my imagination goes a little nuts at times, but I almost picture it as kind of like this pulse that's, I don't know, creating some kind of force field. And when
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
picture him saying something out here, it's like
Mhm.
those words come in, but they hit the force field and sort of bounce off. I'm aware of them, but they're kind of,
Yeah, you're not taking the emotional energy connected to them and owning it for you. You're letting it be his.
right.
You already have your own. You're generating your field. You're generating your reality, and you're just observing his reality.
Yeah.
Kind of a powerful thing.
Very powerful.
And so when you talk about your imagination being so strong, like of course it is, because that's your control panel. This is how you're meant to operate here. It was just always stuck in the external position because that's just what we do out of curiosity about of trying to understand ourselves in the world. And it really makes a lot more sense at a certain point to go like, well, why don't I hook that on my internal connection and my direct connection with God to understand me and to understand my purpose here, rather than asking all these people that are in the same struggle. It's exactly what you described of looking at the hiring committee, trying to make a new decision from that same consciousness, from that same perspective. And I think it was Einstein that said that, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. And so this is about disengaging from that collective wound, from that spinning of feedback loops, and starting to generate and reference internally, reference vertically, rather than referencing out into the world. Not asking all the people that are struggling how you should feel and how you should make them more comfortable, but asking your truest essence of self and your most powerful self, how you should show up. So how's that all land?
It feels really good doing that.
Yeah, awesome. And so what we've done so far right now is we've basically created this direct connection, this channel of light, like you're talking about. There's the light flowing up and down, which is electric. It's electrical energy, and it carries information. And so we haven't really kind of locked it in. So something really fascinating happens is if we close our eyes and drop back in, feeling all the way back at like bringing our awareness into the back of the brain, spinal column, feeling that flow of energy. Let me know when you're there and you feel that flow going up and down.
Yeah.
Okay. And then since we haven't really tied into it, we're just basically lining ourselves up with it. And so something really interesting happens. So if you lean your physical body to about a 45-degree angle over to the side, like this, watch what happens. How does it feel to you as far as that inner electrical feeling, that alignment? And you can slowly come back to the center again, click back in with it. There you go. Let that start to flow through you again. Lift your frequency back up, letting it flow up from the earth. There you go. Yeah. How does it feel to engage and disengage from? Do you
It
have,
feels better sitting up.
yeah, yeah. And so I like to play with that just for a minute to just recognize that we're actually doing something that can feel very physical in nature. You know, it's like we're creating a field and we're aligning with it. And so the next step is to integrate it, to embody it, to really see it as part of our toroidal field. And then there's another piece. Let me bring up this other image. So I'll put it with a toroidal field, and this is the Merkaba. And Merkaba simply means body. And this is an image of it. And so if at first it looks a little bit complicated, but all it is two pyramids, one facing up and one facing down. And they rotate around us. And you know, this is kind of this has been around in all the, like a lot of the ancient texts talk about this. And what it really is when we reach a certain level of frequency, which we can do intentionally, this star basically gauges in our energy field. And what it does is it stabilizes us. And it almost feels like it's a gyroscope. Like if you ever watched a gyroscope spin, like as soon as it really kicks in, it's just like, and it goes vertical.
Right.
And so when that kicks in our energy field, it just pulls us into alignment. And now we don't track in and out of it. It stays with us. Does that make sense?
When you want to be kind of aligned like this, does that literally mean that you need to be sitting upright?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, when we engage at Merkaba, the star, it makes it just track with us. You know, most of the time when I meditate, particularly if I'm going to do longer, deeper meditation, I lay down, because I also know that I'm going to like catch a wave of this energy and then just lose conscious awareness of it, and my body will just start to vibrate. And one of the things we're doing is we're reclaiming the frequency of our body. And so when we're recorded and tapped into our surroundings, our body becomes the frequency of our surroundings, which, you know, your body often doesn't feel comfortable. Like being in this now, do you feel how the comfort's starting to come in? Maybe the heart feels a little more rested, a little bit safer, a little bit more like you, as you would think of you.
Yeah.
That's basically what we're doing, is we're running these frequencies through us, allowing them to fill out into our actual physical body, and we're reclaiming it. Because before, when we recorded with our surroundings, we were just replicating the frequencies and the energetics of our surroundings internally. Our body would become that, and it didn't feel like us because it wasn't. It was our surroundings. And so a lot of us end up being a little bit spacey. We end up maybe popping out our crown a little bit and just kind of hanging out up here because our body doesn't feel like us. Does that resonate?
Yeah.
Awesome. So any questions on any of this craziness that we're playing with here?
One thing that, you know, a while back when I first started working with Elon and Guy, you know, they were talking about, because I was always just 100% in my head. I mean, when I first started working with them, there's no feeling. I mean, it was just chaos up here. And so I started, you know, through meditation, kind of, you know, being more of a feeling person. And I don't know, that whole idea was just super intriguing to me. Like, what does that mean exactly? Like, what's physically going on?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I started looking into it just for the heck of it. And I mean, I'm assuming you've read all kinds of stuff about the vagus nerve, probably, and how the vagus.
I'm vaguely familiar with it, not very intensely. No.
So it
runs through the heart, right?
Yeah, I mean, the vagus nerve. What I thought was so interesting about it is you have your spinal column, where, you know, virtually all your feedback from you know, your limbs, touch, all that comes from. But then your vagus nerve, there's two nerves that come out of the brain. They don't touch the spinal column. They wind around your body like, you know, vagabond, moving around, wandering, or whatever. That's where the name comes from. And they touch your heart, your stomach, all the way into your groin. It's the only nerve that doesn't tap into your spinal column. Right. I remember thinking, I wonder if that's how from just a purely a physical
Mm-hmm.
standpoint, if the vagus nerve is kind of like our antenna or something, because
Yeah.
it,
It
I
was
mean,
coherence too, and because there's an incredible amount of communication between the heart and the brain, the stomach and the heart and the brain. In
right,
fact, there's more communication going to the brain than from the brain.
right. Yeah, I've heard that. That's super interesting. And it doesn't seem intuitive, and I had never
Yeah,
thought about that. Um,
yeah. The brain's not the master organ,
yeah,
which is like such a crazy thing to say, but and it's a trap too because it tries to figure stuff out.
mhm,
And so I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but as we get deeper into the line living work, what you'll start to discover just as your experience is that there's two places we operate from. One is the medulla, which is the prefrontal lobe, like that part of our brain that's trying to make sense of everything and problem solve. And what that brain part of our brain looks for is what's wrong. And so it's constantly engaged in symptoms, because it's like, this is uncomfortable, this is uncomfortable, I need to fix this.
mhm,
And that's why we're like, all of our energy gets stuck and it's so ineffective because we're just rearranging our surroundings. But when we start to operate in that aligned living flow state, all the way back in the back of the brain, in that flow, we start to recognize that doesn't feel that uncomfortable to us anymore. Like you said, it's just happening out there. And then we start to really focus on taking the next right action that is about solutions rather than causes of the problem. And there's no shortage of symptoms in this world. And so we put all our energy into that and never get anywhere. But when we start to focus on, what is the actual solution, and we start to operate in that place, things happen so quickly. It was funny. I was working with a chiropractor, and he was saying, like, I'm really confused. Like, why are we working here to solve this? I'm like, you're a chiropractor. Are you kidding me? Like if somebody comes in and their hip's sore, do you work on their hip or do you work on their spine? He's like, oh, I got it.
right,
Does that make sense?
mhm,
And so then it kind of becomes this fun game as we start to play here and watch out there change. And it's pretty trippy how fast it happens.
yeah,
Because it's literally, we're just working upstream. It's like, if you're in a river and you're like, oh my God, we need to treat this water, it's polluted, and so we do all this filtering, all this stuff. Or you can go upstream and pull the dead animal out of it. And you're like, oh, well, now all that energy we put into our filtering systems and all that stuff is not relevant anymore. We just got
exactly.
an elk laying in the middle of the river, sending all this bacteria down the
That's how it feels sometimes. It feels like there's a dead animal up here that's just rotting away, and yeah,
Yeah, and that is the nature of, like, I mean, when you like your work environment, there's a dead animal somewhere in there that's just polluting stuff, right?
yep,
And so when we disengage from that and start to generate, like, what is the right energy for this? What is the right solution? What is it? Like, when you go into an existing situation like a current work, now there's a lot of resistance that happens because you're shifting a lot of stuff that has a ton of momentum. And you're moving to a place now where there's more freedom for you to start to generate, like, what works for you. And that's part of, like, the perfection and the rearranging that's happening in your career and in work life right now.
yeah,
That you're not having to fight against the momentum.
right.
Yeah, cool. So should we go ahead and let's see? Yeah, we got about 15 minutes here. Let's go ahead and lock in um, the the Merkaba, and we'll go ahead and fill the body with this light. And so from your spiritual religious perspectives, is God the term that feels the most comfortable to use as far
Yeah,
as what you're tapping into in that
yeah,
light, the divine essence?
yep.
Beautiful. And then how does it work for you too when you think about that divine reflection in the earth, in the sacred earth? Does that feel comfortable to you too as you tap into that grounded energy of the earth?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're using the
Mhm,
approach that is going to make it resonate with your current system. Because what it does is when we operate in this is whatever way of operating we have, it enhances it. Like it works with whatever our current system is.
right.
It doesn't derail things. It doesn't replace. Um, it it expands and enhances.
Yeah.
Awesome, sweet. So good. We're ready to drop into that next stage. And I'm going to stop the recording and start the recording so that it's all on one. So that way you can download it even to your phone. And I recommend you start in the morning with this, and then just check in throughout the day if you need to do any resets. And then at night, going to bed, like it's really a powerful sleep. And the first week is just about how long can I stay in this, and am I aware of whether I'm out in that congestion or whether I'm in internally, and allowing that to be kind of your focus for the first week. Of, do I know the difference, and am I keeping that in my awareness?
Okay.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll go through the whole process then with the consciousness lock shutdown, opening internally, calling on that direct connection with God, running the energy through down into the earth, bringing the energy up from the earth, running it through. So with this conduit, the center channel, with energy running in both directions. And then we'll start in the heart and fill our body with that light. And we're going to allow it to expand out beyond the body. And as we do, we're still going to stay centered in it. We're not going to follow the energy. We're going to trust that it has its own innate divine intelligence and that it's out affecting our surroundings. We don't need to go with it. We don't need to get into the struggles. However people want to respond to us, that's theirs. Sending out like this uplifting engagement of grounded, high frequency energy. And then we'll work into the solar plexus, just below the ribs, sacral, just below the navel, root and legs. And then we go up to the throat and third eye and head and crown. And then we'll get the toroidal field going, and then the Merkaba. And that'll be the whole initial activation.
Sounds good.
Any questions? Good to go. All right. Awesome. I'll stop the recording then and start it again. And we'll jump in here. Beautiful. Go ahead and close your eyes and take some nice deep breaths as you relax into your body. And we're going to start by going through the consciousness lock, that checking to see if we're corded or tapped into anything outside of ourselves. And we're going to bring our emotional body back home again, back inside. So start by putting the hands out with the palms open. You don't need to expand out, but we're just having an awareness of whether there's anything connected outside or not. As you feel ready, closing the hands into a fist, bring them down to your lap, allowing that bubble to close over the top of the head, on the back and sides, below the feet, the front and back of the heart, just a big sphere, big bubble all the way around you. It's really important that we take a minute while we're here to just let anything that's not your energy clear your field. So anything you may have gathered from your surroundings, from other people, and just relax in here as you don't hold on to anything, because what's not yours is going to naturally want to leave. There we go. Let that just flow out of your field. You don't follow it, you just let it leave. It's not yours, it's not you, it's just stuff you've picked up from your surroundings. It's kind of like part of our energetic hygiene. It's like taking a shower. We're just clearing off the stuff we picked up from the day. And as you feel ready, we're going to put one hand over the heart, one over the solar plexus, opening up the palms as we open up internally, calling on that direct connection with God as we invite that beautiful channel of white light to come in through the crown. There you go. As you do, it starts to just flow in through the top of the head and through the back of the brain, spinal column. Letting it flow through the neck. Works down through the vertebrae and the spine, filling through the heart. Continuing down each vertebrae in the spine, all the way down to the tailbone at the base of the spine, down into the earth, deep down, way, way, way down in the earth, way past the surface. This sacred earth, that divine reflection, deep in the earth, ground into that, feeling that stability and strength. We invite that light from the sacred earth now to flow back up through the bottom of the feet, through the base of the spine, running that same exact energy that we connect with from source, flowing up the tailbone, through the spine, through the heart, through the back of the neck and back of the brain, spinal column, out the crown, just being this perfect conduit now between source and sacred earth, this channel of light. So we bring our awareness down to your heart, We invite that light from God to flow down, filling into the heart. And as it does, we invite it to flow across the chest and shoulders, for the back and shoulder blades, feeling each cell just shifting and coming in resonance with the truest sense of self, that divine self. So we allow that light to flow out the arms to the elbows, or the forearms and wrists, the hands and fingers and palms of the hands lighting up, just becoming fully activated as that light from the sacred earth also flows up, filling through the heart and chest. Allowing yourself to just relax as you let the DNA, let the cells in the body shift and come in resonance with self. There you go. As it comes into fullness now around the heart and arms, we're going to allow it to start to radiate out. It's this rather sphere of light, getting bigger and bigger. Don't follow it, you just stay centered in it. It's this perfect sustainable flow as light flows into the crown, light flows up from the earth. It fills this heart and sphere of light, and the extra radiates out in your surroundings, giving this uplift to everybody around you that you come in contact with. And you stay centered in it, just benefiting from this beautiful light as others around you benefit from it as well. Beautiful. Now we bring our awareness down to the solar plexus just below the ribs. As that light from the source, from God, flows in, flowing down the spine, filling through the ribs and internal organs, through the back. As that sacred earth energy flows up, filling through the solar plexus. Beautiful. Letting that pop out into that sphere of light around the heart. It gets bigger and bigger. Perfect sustainable flow, feeling that light flowing in from source, that light flowing up from the earth. Beautiful. Now we bring the awareness down just below the navel to the sacral. As that light from God flows in through the crown, filling through the lower back, the hips and internal organs. And that sacred earth energy also flowing up, filling through the sacral, letting it expand out to join that sphere of light around the heart and solar plexus. Notice that sphere of light comes out the back, sides, and front, all the same. It's like this big ball of light radiating out. Beautiful. And it stays in perfect balance. The amount of energy that's flowing in through your crown, the amount of energy that's flowing up from your earth, stays in balance with the amount that's going out. It's perfectly sustainable and balanced. To bring the awareness now down to the base of the spine, that light from God flows all the way down the tailbone, filling into the root, to the base of the spine, filling that channel of light running into the earth. So it also runs down the legs, seeing that beautiful white light all the way down to the knees, calves and shins, your ankles and heels, feet and toes, out the bottom of the feet into the earth. As that sacred earth energy also flows up through the legs, through the tailbone. Just relax and let the energy flow through you, letting the legs and root join that sphere of light around the heart and solar plexus and sacral, radiating out. The energy gets bigger and bigger. You're just this beacon of God's light radiating out. Beautiful. Now we bring our awareness to your throat as that light from God flows in through the crown, filling through the neck and throat, back of the neck, clavicle. Just allowing the throat to relax as it takes on this divine frequency, as it comes in resonance with yourself and your direct connection with God. And that sacred earth energy joins in as well, flowing up through the throat, letting it expand out to become part of that sphere of light. So you're fully embodying this direct connection, this energy that is you, goes well beyond you. We bring our awareness now up to the third eye, to the forehead, as that light from God flows in through the crown, flowing across the forehead and through the third eye. So the third eye starts to activate a little bit more. We're going to allow that light to flow right through the third eye, through the brain, and all the way back to the spinal column, out the back of the head as it flows out the back of the third eye, wrapping around the base of the skull as that beautiful white light from God wraps around the ears, the brow and eyes. Eyes become activated, on the cheeks to the nose, on your jaw, your chin and lips, teeth and tongue and mouth, all lighting up with this beautiful light, this direct connection as that sacred earth energy also flows up, filling through the head, letting it expand out to join that sphere of light, radiating out as it keeps getting bigger and bigger. When we bring our awareness now to your crown, to the very top of your head, as that channel of light, that direct connection with God opens up, filling the top of the head, filling that channel above you, and that sacred earth energy also comes up, expanding. Beautiful. Letting it all popping out into this sphere of light around you. We're going to invite the energy to start to organize a bit more now as it gathers above the top of the head. We're going to create that toroidal field as it flows down through the crown, down the spine, out the base of the spine, looping around the outside of the body, flowing back in again through the crown. This toroidal field can run in both directions, up and down, so we're just letting it get bigger and bigger, organizing, stabilizing. Now we're going to invite in the Merkaba, that light body, that next level of activation in your field. So we ask to be showing the point above your head in the center channel, where the top of that first pyramid is, in that direct connection with God. Beautiful. And as we do, we invite that pyramid to pop out into being and fill with that same light from God and start to spin. Then we ask to be showing the point below your feet in that channel running down into the sacred earth, where the second pyramid is. Beautiful. Let that pop out into being, forming the rest of this beautiful star that fills with that light from God, radiating out as it starts to spin. There it goes. And then just let that expand out as it stabilizes you, pulling you into alignment, making this state of consciousness, a state of awareness, this ascended state, sustainable. Just relaxing into it, allowing your body to adjust, allowing your body to come in resonance with it. Bring our awareness into the center of that center channel, feeling that connection with the back of the brain, spinal column, that flow of light running through us. And from here, we can even drop down into the heart and feel a little pulling sensation as you relax into your heart. There you go. Maintain that awareness of flow. Recognizing that all of your influx, all the energy and light information flowing into you now is directly in that center channel, that direct connection with God and this reflection in the earth, that sacred earth. And then sharing that divine light with your surroundings. Stabilizing and knowing who you are from your direct connection. Creating a new feedback. Your resonance with your direct alignment with God. And letting that share with the world. Not following the energy, but letting the world interact with it how it needs to as you bring this light and ground this light onto the planet. And we set the intention that we just continue in this state, in this awareness, in this alignment as we step forward into the day. As you feel ready, you can slowly open the eyes. Bring your awareness to include the surroundings. Beautiful. I just stopped and restarted the recording again. How you doing?
Good. So good.
Yeah, yeah. So what are you noticing?
There is kind of a detachment still. Just inside just feels strong right now. Almost kind of like, as you were talking, I was thinking, it's like I have my own battery inside.
Yeah.
It's relying on the grid or something. It's kind of.
Yeah. You're off the grid. That's a great way of putting it.
That's just what came to my mind. I was thinking, I feel like I'm independent at the moment, feeling that way.
And that's what aligned living is. It's sovereignty and direct connection. So it's like we're really connected with unity consciousness. And so duality is a split from unity consciousness. And so when we're engaged in duality, which is the world that we've known it, we lose connection with unity. And so this is kind of the mind fuck, so to speak, of this is like, so I'm disconnecting from what I've known as connection to create connection, and then I can connect. like, okay, I think I get it, but it feels counterintuitive.
Do people do this just naturally in a way? Like take people that you would think are successful or just kind of have things going for them. Is it because they're just naturally able to do something like this, or would they be 10 times better if they knew how to do
It
this?
varies so much by individual. Some of it's density. Some people are just a bulldozer that just keeps trotting through everybody else's stuff and not worrying about it. And this is different because this is uplifting everybody. And while we're saying, you know, your bad mood does not put me in a bad mood. Your bad mood doesn't, in your judgments, doesn't make me judge myself anymore. And I'm just sending this energy out back to you. Sometimes it's uncomfortable for people to have to deal with. And it creates what I call the tractor beam and the gift of rejection, which we'll talk about more, but it basically draws in what's in the resonance and it repels what's not. And so it creates really powerful shifts. And when we allow that to run through every aspect of our life, the things that are really powerful connections become so much stronger, and the things that aren't start to move away.
Yeah.
They vibrate out of our field.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's really simple when we break it down, but it's just not how we've known reality. And so it's and then the answer is always like, am I aligned or am I not? If I'm aligned and I'm operating from this place, then I can trust what I'm creating. I can trust what's coming through me. I can be much more in flow. And when I'm caught up in the problem, when I'm out meddling with my surroundings, I know I'm actually messing with what I'm already creating and creating problems, engaging in the problem.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. It does seem simple. It's not. I think it takes a lot of practice to get good at it.
Yeah, and we'll do more activations that keep taking it to another level, and keep giving you more and more ability to, because this also is where we channel from. This is where we get that direct connection, where we can pull information through, where we can pull knowing, where we can have a different sense of reality, because now we're communicating with the higher realms. As opposed to, you know, it's like, who do you want to ask? All these people around you that are all caught up in their gunk, or like this divine connection that we create and becomes our priority. You know, it's really fascinating what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Oh, felt good.
Cool. So I'll send you the Dropbox. You got the last one from last week?
Yep.
And so there'll be 3 recordings. There'll be the main part of the session, the meditation, and then this little conversation we're having here at the end.
Okay.
And so you can even put all the audio from the middle one, download onto your phone. It makes it really easy to do. But I do recommend using the recordings at first, because there's so much energetic support that happens with it. It'll make it a lot easier to do it.
Yeah, I'll do that today.
Awesome. So scheduling then. You feel how it's almost a little bit dizzying sometimes too when we go back and forth between the worlds, like the.
Yeah. Let's see here. Does next Monday work for you?
Let's see. I would have to do. Yeah, let's see. So I'd have to do a little bit earlier because I have a 9:40 appointment, so I could do like 8 to 9:30.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Awesome. Let me send out that invite right now while we're on it.
Cool.
There we go. Sorry, so it's nice to get this done while we're here so that we're. Yeah, so starting to see this as a game too. You said you're going into a meeting right now, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to play with it from the sense of like, it's funny, one of my clients he's like, I kind of feel like everybody has their own gravitational field, like we're all planets. Everybody's trying to pull each other into each other's gravitational field. And so I just focus on my own gravity, on my own alignment, and just watch how it affects the people around me. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, so 8 to 9:30. So yeah, play with it and feel what it feels like in this meeting. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
Yeah, sounds good.
So 11:11. So we're 11:11 19. Awesome. Let me just send the invite to you. It's Tanner. There we go. Send it. Sweet. Awesome, man. Well, have fun playing with this too. It's really fascinating, and we'll talk about like how to connect more with people, more closely with people like your wife, and because you'll feel that at first, and she'll probably feel it too. Of like, you feel kind of distant. There's something going on. So we'll talk about ways to work with that. But it's always good to just keep the communication open. It's just the meditation, and it will open up more. But you'll feel that you do connect with people. You'll feel like this drop down in frequency if they're not in a high frequency, which is really bizarre. And then it makes you of not wanting to chord with stuff that's not high vibe.
Right.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, and if anything comes up, if things start to feel stuck at all throughout the week, don't hesitate to reach out because this is a new operating system.
Yeah.
Takes a little getting used to.
Nice.
Awesome. So good, Russ.
All right. Thanks, David.
Of course. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.